You know, I used to think that peace was something you found in the quiet moments, in the space between the ticks of a clock. But I've learned that real peace, it's something you have to build. And sometimes you have to fight for it, even, and maybe especially, against the people you love the most. My name is Alice. I'm 64 years old. And if you told me 2 years ago that I'd be sitting here in my Colorado cabin telling my story to strangers on the internet, I'd have said you were crazy. But life has a way of rewriting your plans. This is more than a story about a house. It's about what happens when you finally stop being a placeholder in someone else's life and decide to become the main character in your own. If you've ever felt used or taken for granted, or if you've just lost a little piece of yourself by always giving to everyone else, then pull up a chair, my dear. This is for you. It all starts, as so many stories do, with a dream. My Frank, he was the dreamer. A big, wonderful man with calloused hands and a heart so soft it could melt snow. We met in our 20s, two kids with nothing but a beat-up truck and a shared love for the mountains. We'd drive up here, to this very spot, and we'd park right where my garden is now. We'd spread a blanket and share a thermos of cheap coffee and just dream. "One day, Alice," he'd say, his arm around me, "right here. We'll build a house with a big porch. We'll watch the aspens turn gold every fall. We'll grow old here, listening to the wind in the pines." He made it feel so real, I could almost touch the doorknob. That was his gift. He made the future feel like a promise, not just a possibility. But one day never came for my Frank. Pancreatic cancer. It's a brutal thief. It didn't just take him, it took the color from the world. For a long time, everything was gray. The grief was a physical weight, a heavy coat I wore in the middle of summer. I was a 44-year-old widow with a 14-year-old son to raise, and the silence in our house was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Robert was my reason to get out of bed. He looked so much like his father, it was like a fresh ache every morning. I poured everything I had into him. All the love I had for Frank, all the dreams we'd shared, I channeled it all into our boy. I worked double shifts at the paralegal firm. I became the queen of budgets. Every dollar had a name and a destination. And that's when the dream of this cabin stopped being a sweet memory and started becoming my mission. It was my lighthouse. On the days when the grief felt like it would pull me under, I would open my special savings account ledger, just a simple notebook back then, and I would enter a new amount. $50, $100, sometimes just $20. It wasn't just money. It was a piece of my hope. Every deposit was another log for the walls, another nail in the frame of the future Frank and I had imagined. I remember one December, Robert wanted the newest, most expensive video game system. All his friends had it. He begged and pleaded, "I'm the only one, Mom." I looked at his face, so full of want, and I looked at my ledger. The amount I would have spent on that game was exactly the amount I needed to reach my savings goal for the month. I sat him down, and I did something I rarely did. I showed him the ledger. "See this, Robbie?" I said, my finger tracing the line of numbers. "This is our cabin. This is the porch your dad talked about. This number right here is a window. This one is the front door. That game, that's the doorknob. Do you understand? We have to choose." He was a smart kid. He looked at the numbers, then at my face, and his little shoulders slumped. "I want the doorknob, Mom," he whispered. We cried together that night, but they were good tears. We were building something together. That's how it was for 20 years. I packed a lunch every single day. A turkey sandwich, an apple, a bag of carrots. I can't tell you how many times I've eaten that same lunch. My coworkers would go out for fancy salads, and I'd smile and say, "I brought mine." I drove a car that rattled so much it sounded like it was filled with marbles. I learned to mend clothes, to cut my own hair, to find joy in the library instead of the bookstore. It wasn't a life of lack. It was a life of purpose. I was building my sanctuary. And then, 2 years ago, I did it. I transferred the final monumental payment. The cabin was mine. The day the deed arrived in the mail, I drove up here alone. I didn't tell anyone. I walked through every room, running my hands over the woodwork, standing in the spot where Frank and I had picnicked. I sat on the porch steps, the same steps I'm looking at now, and I sobbed. It was a storm of every emotion: grief, pride, exhaustion, and a fierce, blazing joy. I had done it. For me. For Frank. For us. But while I was building my future, I was unknowingly dismantling my son's character. That's a hard thing for a mother to admit. Robert grew up. He went to college, got a good job in marketing. He was charming, just like his dad. But somewhere along the way, the boy who chose the doorknob faded away. He met Sharon at a work conference. She was sharp, beautiful, and she had an air of ambition that I think Robert mistook for strength. She came from a family that was all about appearances: the right car, the right neighborhood, the right brand of sparkling water. It was a language I didn't speak. When they decided to get married, the wedding was a spectacle. I offered them a generous amount, a sum that represented a full year of my careful savings. Sharon's parents matched it, but it wasn't enough. They had their hearts set on a venue that was, well, let's just say it cost more than my first house. "Mom," Robert said to me one evening, his voice that special blend of wheedling and love that always got to me. "This is the most important day of our lives. It's just the deposit. If we could just bridge the gap, we'll pay you back, I promise." That was the first promise of many that would be broken. I saw the look in Sharon's eyes when she talked about the wedding. It wasn't just happiness. It was a kind of hungry triumph. I wanted my son to be happy, so I bridged the gap. I handed over a check that felt like I was tearing out a piece of my own spine. That was the crack in the dam. The house hunt was next. They found a beautiful, sprawling house in a new development. It was far more house than they needed, but Sharon had fallen in love with the granite countertops and the statement-making entryway. Their pre-approval amount wasn't enough. The down payment needed was staggering. The phone call came. "Mom, you're so good with money. You know how to make it work. It's an investment. We just need a little help." That little help was nearly 60% of the down payment. It was the single largest check I had ever written, larger even than the final payment for my cabin. It emptied a significant portion of my non-retirement savings. I told myself it was an investment in his stability, in my future grandchildren's home. But the help didn't stop there. It was a slow, steady drip of requests that became expectations. "Mom, since you're so good with your insurance guy, could you just add my car to your policy? It'll be cheaper. I'll Venmo you my share." The Venmo request never came. "Mom, Sharon is really stressed with work. Her doctor said an elite gym membership would be great for her anxiety. It's a holistic approach." So I paid for the holistic approach. Then came the mortgage. "Mom, things are just a little tight this month with the property taxes. Could you maybe just help with a few hundred just until my big project at work closes?" That few hundred became a permanent, automated monthly payment. I was now a line item in their budget. I became the bank of mom. It was my identity. I'd see my son and daughter-in-law, and the conversation would always start with, "Hi, Mom, how are you?" But it would inevitably turn into a financial question, a problem I could solve with my checkbook. And the more I gave, the more distant they became. The invitations for Sunday dinners dwindled. My calls went to voicemail. My texts were answered with one-word replies. Fine. Busy. Okay. I was living in a state of constant, low-grade anxiety, a feeling that I was always one missed payment away from losing my son's love. I convinced myself that this was the modern way, that I was lucky to be able to help, that a good mother supports her children no matter what. But a good mother also teaches her children to stand on their own 2 feet, and I had failed at that. The wake-up call was my 62nd birthday. I dressed up, I bought a small, expensive cake from a bakery I'd always wanted to try. I waited. The whole day I watched my phone. I thought, surely they'll call. They'll stop by. A text, a card, something. The sun went down. The cake sat on the table, untouched. The silence in my house was no longer just the absence of Frank. It was the absence of everything. I felt like a ghost in my own life. I looked around at the beautiful, quiet, empty house I lived in, a house I'd paid for by myself, and I realized I had built a gorgeous, perfectly furnished cage. That was the night I decided to run away to my real home. I didn't call. I didn't text. I felt a strange, defiant thrill as I threw my suitcase in the car. For the first time in years, I was doing something just for me. The drive to Colorado was a 4-hour therapy session. With every mile that clicked by, I could feel the knots in my shoulders loosening. I rolled down the windows and let the cold, pine-scented air whip through the car. I played Frank's old country music tapes, and I sang along at the top of my lungs. I was giddy. I was free. I turned onto my dirt road, and the world changed. The noise of the city was gone, replaced by a sacred quiet. The snow was fresh, blanketing everything in a soft, white hush. It was perfect, my sanctuary. And then I came around the last bend. The first thing I saw was the glint of sun on a foreign car's windshield, then another, and then Robert's familiar SUV. My first thought was, oh, a surprise! They remembered my birthday. They're here to celebrate with me. My heart soared. All was forgiven. But as I got closer, the details began to register. The cars were parked haphazardly, as if the drivers had been in a hurry. There were no footprints leading to the front door, just a messy, trampled path in the snow. And then I heard it. The thumping bass of music that was definitely not Frank's country tunes. I turned off my engine. The silence outside was now oppressive, broken only by the muffled beat and the occasional burst of laughter from inside. My hands were shaking as I got out of the car. The cold air bit my cheeks. I walked slowly to the front door, my boots making the only clean prints in the snow. The porch light was on, a light I hadn't left on. I reached for the heavy iron handle, the one I'd saved for 6 months, and pushed. The smell hit me first. Stale wine, rich perfume, and the greasy scent of fried appetizers. The scene in front of me was so surreal, it took my brain a moment to process it. There were about 15 people, all dressed in the kind of expensive casual wear that Sharon favored. They were draped over my sofa, leaning against my bookshelves, holding red wine glasses over my pale cream rug. My beautiful hand-carved coffee table from Santa Fe was covered in a forest of bottles and plates of half-eaten food. My eyes darted to the walls. This is when my breath caught in my throat. The gallery wall, my life story and photographs, was gone. The picture of Frank and me on our wedding day, him looking so young and proud, Robert's first birthday, covered in cake, our last family vacation before Frank got sick, all gone. In their place were stark, modern, oversized black and white portraits. Sharon's parents, Sharon's sister's family, artistic shot of Sharon and Robert, one I'd never seen before. It was a hostile takeover. They had erased me. My gaze swept the room, desperately searching for my son. I found him, partially hidden in the kitchen doorway. He was holding a beer, his shoulders hunched. When his eyes met mine, the color drained from his face so completely I thought he might faint. He looked like a little boy who'd been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, only the jar was my entire life. Before I could say a word, Sharon emerged from the crowd. She was wearing a sleek black dress and holding a glass of champagne. She didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," she said, her voice cutting through the music and chatter. The room slowly quieted. All eyes turned to me, the interloper in my own home. "Sharon?" I managed, my voice a dry croak. "What is this? What's going on?" She gave a light, tinkling laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "I think the more appropriate question is, what are you doing here? This is a private event." I was so confused. Private? Sharon, this is my house. Her smile tightened. She took a few steps closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear the venom in it. "Let's not make a scene in front of my family. I suggest you turn around and leave. Now." I looked at Robert. "Robert, please." He took a half step forward, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "Mom, maybe you should go. We can talk about this later." The betrayal was a physical blow. I felt it in my chest. But then something else rose up in me. A cold, clear fury. This was my home. Frank's dream. My 20 years of sacrifice. I looked Sharon dead in the eye. My voice, when it came out, was steady and quiet, but it carried. "No, I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes narrowed. She pulled out her phone, her thumb swiped across the screen with practiced ease. "I'm calling the police." A gasp went through the room. One of her aunts put a hand to her mouth. "Go ahead," I said. I walked calmly past her, through the crowd of stunned guests, and sat down in my armchair by the stone fireplace. I placed my purse on my lap and folded my hands over it. I felt a profound, unshakable calm. I'll wait. The 20 minutes it took for the sheriff's deputies to arrive were the most clarifying of my life. The party was dead. People stood around awkwardly, sipping their drinks, not knowing what to do. Sharon's father tried to talk to me, to reason with me. I just looked out the window at the mountains and didn't say a word. Robert had disappeared into the back of the house. He couldn't even face me. When the deputies arrived, a tall, seasoned man and a younger woman with a no-nonsense expression, Sharon practically flew to the door. "Thank God you're here," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured panic. "This woman has broken into our home. She's trespassing and refusing to leave." The female deputy, her name tag read Deputy Miller, looked from Sharon's frantic face to my calm one. "Ma'am," she said to me. I stood up. "My name is Alice Margaret Preston. I am the sole owner of this property." I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against the manila folder. It was a habit I'd gotten into after Frank died. always having important documents with me, a lingering fear of being unprepared. Today, that habit was my salvation. I handed Deputy Miller the folder. Inside was the original deed, the most recent property tax bill, and a bank statement showing the tax payment from my account. It was all there, in black and white. My name, my address, my life. The deputy reviewed the documents carefully. She looked at Sharon. "Ma'am, these documents are clear. The property belongs to Miss Preston." The look on Sharon's face was one of pure, unadulterated rage. It twisted her pretty features into something ugly. "That's impossible! She's lying! Robert, get out here!" Robert slunk out of the hallway, unable to lift his head. "It's true," he mumbled to the floor. "It's her cabin." The humiliation for Sharon was absolute. Her family watched, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning understanding. They had been lied to. "Well," Deputy Miller said, her voice firm, "it seems you are all here without the owner's permission. Miss Preston, would you like them to leave?" "Yes, I would," I said, "and I would appreciate it if you would stay while they gather their belongings and vacate my property." What followed was a scene of beautiful, chaotic justice. The mighty were fallen. Sharon's family scrambled for their coats and purses, their faces flushed with embarrassment. Robert and Sharon went to the bedroom, emerging a few minutes later with hastily packed suitcases. They couldn't look at me. As they filed out the door into the cold, dark night, I felt a final piece of my old self fall away. But I wasn't done. The financial chains that bound me to them needed to be severed, and I wanted witnesses. "Robert," I said. He stopped on the porch, his shoulders tense. I took out my phone. The screen glowed in the twilight. I opened my banking app. "For the last 5 years," I announced, my voice clear and carrying in the crisp air, "I have made an automatic payment of $537 to your mortgage company." I found the payment, tapped "Cancel Automatic Transfer," and confirmed it. A soft chime sounded. Canceled. "Mom, don't," he pleaded, taking a step back toward me. "For the last 7 years," I continued, my voice unwavering, "I have paid $189 a month for your car insurance." Tap, tap, chime. Canceled. "You're ruining us," Sharon shrieked from the driveway. I looked right at her. "For the last 3 years, I have paid $115 a month for your gym membership." Tap, tap, chime. Canceled. I looked back at my son, who was now crying silent tears in the freezing air. The deputies watched, their expressions unreadable. I said to my son, "The down payment for your house was a gift from a mother to her son. I can't get that back. I wouldn't want to. But everything else, the monthly stipends, the bailouts, the endless help, it ends now. You are adults. You will learn to stand on your own, or you will fall, but you will not use me as your mattress anymore." I turned to the deputies. "Thank you for your assistance. They are no longer welcome on my property." I didn't wait to see them drive away. I closed my door. I locked it. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood, and for the first time that night, I cried. Great heaving sobs that came from the very depths of my soul. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release. I was free. The weeks that followed were a period of deep healing. I cleaned the cabin with a ferocious energy, scrubbing away every trace of their presence. I went into town and bought simple, beautiful frames and spent a whole day carefully rehanging every single one of my photographs. Frank was back, smiling from the mantel. My little boy was back, blowing out his birthday candles. I was back. I ignored the storm of texts and calls, the anger, the pleas, the guilt trips. I let the silence be my answer. I started reading again. I learned to identify the birds that came to my feeder. I sat for hours on the porch, just watching the light change on the mountains. I was rediscovering the person I was before I became just a bank account. Through a dear friend, I heard about the aftermath. Without my monthly infusion, their carefully constructed financial house of cards collapsed. They fell behind on their mortgage. The bank foreclosed. Robert, buckling under the stress, was let go from his job. The pressure was too much. The marriage, built on a foundation of sand and my money, crumbled. Sharon moved out. It was a total collapse. A full year passed. The seasons turned. The aspens did their glorious golden dance, just as Frank had promised they would. I found a peace I hadn't known was possible. Then, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Robert. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. "Mom?" His voice was thin, hollow. It was the voice of a man who had lost everything. We agreed to meet at a small, quiet cafe in a town neither of us knew. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth, staring into a cup of coffee. He looked 10 years older. The cocky shine from his eyes was replaced by a weary humility. He didn't speak for a long time. Then the words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other. "I'm sorry, Mom. I am so sorry for everything. For the cabin, for letting Sharon, for not stopping her, for all the years of taking from you. You were right. We were pathetic. We were users. We saw your kindness as a weakness. We saw your love as a blank check. I am so ashamed." I let him talk. I let him empty his heart of all the poison. He cried. And as I watched my son, broken and humbled, I didn't feel victory. I felt a profound, motherly sadness for the man he had become, and a flicker of hope for the man he could be. When he was finished, I reached across the table and put my hand over his. "Robert," I said softly, "I forgive you." A wave of relief washed over his face. "But," I continued, and I saw the hope in his eyes flicker, "I need you to understand what that means. I forgive you for my sake, so I can let go of the anger and the hurt. It's too heavy for me to carry. But forgiveness is not a reset button." I took a deep breath. "I will never give you another dollar. Not for a house, not for a car, not for a cup of coffee. That chapter of our lives is closed forever. You are a 50-year-old man. You will build your own life with your own 2 hands, just as I had to do. There are no more safety nets." He nodded slowly, absorbing the finality of it. "I understand." "I am your mother," I said. "I will always love you. And I am open to having a relationship with you. But it will be a new relationship. It will be small and slow and from a distance for a while. It will be based on phone calls about your life, not your bills. It will be based on visits where we talk about books or the weather or your dreams, not your debts. It will be based on you loving me for who I am, not for what I can do for you." It was a hard thing for him to hear. The old Robert wanted the quick fix, the easy solution. But the man sitting in front of me just nodded again. "Okay, Mom. Okay." We parted with an awkward, hopeful hug. It wasn't a happy ending. It was a real beginning. So, here I am, in my home, in my peace. The life I have now is the one Frank and I dreamed of, even if I'm living it alone. It is a life built on my own terms, funded by my own strength. If my story has found its way to you, please hear this. Love is not a transaction. Helping is a beautiful thing, but it should never require you to disappear. You are allowed to have boundaries. You are allowed to say, "I love you," but I cannot set myself on fire to keep you warm. You are allowed to be the hero of your own story, even if it means some people exit the narrative. My relationship with my son is a fragile seedling now. We talk once a month. It's stilted, but it's honest. And that's more than we had before. If this story touched you, if you saw a piece of your own life in mine, then I have a favor to ask. Please subscribe to this channel. By sharing our truths, we build a community of strength. We remind each other that we are not alone in our struggles to find balance between love and self-respect. Leave a comment. Tell me about your journey. Your words matter. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, a friend, a sister, a mother who is giving too much, please share this video with them. Let us pass on the courage to say, enough. It took me 6 decades and a heartbreak I never saw coming to find my voice. My greatest hope is that my story helps you find yours a little sooner and with a little less pain. Thank you for listening. Truly. From my mountain home to yours, be well, be strong, and always, always honor the person you are.